you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dorothy, for this opportunity to share something I love to do. And I love to share and explain it and teach others hand embossing. I am a lifelong calligrapher. I began my career in 1968, and that's a very long time ago. I'm much better with letters than numbers, so I don't even want to do the math of how long I've been doing this. And I find that blind embossing is a terrific way to add another element to your page of writing. It seems to get along with lettering well, very well, because it's kind of a background thing. It's not um, overly competing with the writing. There's no color to it. You're just changing the shape of the paper. And it's a very, very exciting thing. And it's also very, very simple. I think you'll be surprised how simple it is. And it requires no special tools. It's likely you have everything you would need right there in your studio already. So I would like to share my PowerPoint for a brief introduction. And okay, this is a preview. After we look at a little bit of a few examples, I will go to my desk and I will show you how it works. Here's an example that combines the hand embossing with my calligraphy. Taking images of hand embossing is tricky because the lighting has to come from the side, and it isn't always the best lighting for the page of writing, but it hits the texture of the hand embossing nicely. This is a goofy page. It says, in the right light, at the right time, everything is extraordinary. It's a quote that I like very much, and I used an alphabet I designed called Jubilee scripts. And it's meant to slow down the reader and maybe let you think about things a little more. Here's an Asian symbol for water and my calligraphy combined. You do the writing first and then the embossing because you don't want to write over all those bumps. This is an example of I made a spiral that I can then add my writing to, and it just gives the page a little more interest. Again, the dragonfly came after the calligraphy. You're able to place it after the writing and also not worry about the bumps. And this one also, the embossing was done last. Here's the stencil that I used for the mountains and an example of using it. I can overlap and repeat it. It's a delightful image to work with. These are the simple tools you need. I make my stencils out of manila file folders or something of similar weight. File folders are strong, and when I'm going to spend time cutting a stencil, I'd like it to last a long time. So file folder is a good material. You'll need a little bit of tracing paper, a sharp X-Acto knife, an embossing stylus that could also be a crochet hook or an empty ballpoint pen. You want something with a roundy, pointy end on it. Little drafting tape and a glue stick. So I think you'd agree that that is a very simple supply list for us. All right, so I'd like to stop share and go to my desk and show you a little bit more. So here are those simple tools we looked at. The embossing stylus might be the one tool you don't have, and it's a nice tool. I'm also very fond of this. My friend Julie Gray took a Bic pen and emptied out all the ink and made this great embossing tool, so it works well. Recycling. It's nice to have a bone folder, and I'll show you why in a minute. Glue stick, drafting tape, tracing paper, and file folder. Okay. So I'm going to share this. Is a simple, small stencil of a small bird. And we're going to emboss that on this paper. This is Canson. It's kind of cardstock weight, and it's a favorite paper for embossing. I'm going to slide my light pad over here and turn it on. I like to tape everything in place so there isn't anything shifting around while I'm working. And I'll take my little piece of paper and fold it in half. And I would like the dove to be embossed here on the front. So I take that and line that up against the stencil and decide, where do I want it? I think I'd like it centered, sort of. So rather than just hold it there, it's a good idea, again, to tape everything in place. So I'm ready to emboss now. And I don't know what this does, but it helps. You rub your finger over the area. It either puts a little skin oil on the paper or it warms it. I don't know, but it always helps. Now I'm going to press hard along the edges. The nice thing is the file folder isn't so thick that I would press and poke a hole. It's the right thickness for just getting that nice clean shape. So I'm running this tool around the edge. Hard. I'm pressing very hard. I want a good image. So I've just gone around all of the edges, and now I'm going to just take my bone folder and press along the insides. This makes it a more raised image. Okay, we need the reveal here. Lighting from the side. So you can see that that's the inside, and here is the front. Looks pretty wonderful. And it was very fast and fun and simple. Okay, good. So that is a simple shape that embossed beautifully. Next up, we're going to talk about a more complex image. So I have a heart here, and I'm going to emboss it. Tape it down. Got my paper. Tape it down. And it's good to be reminded of all of these steps. Oops. I'm just going to go around the edge on this one. I am going around twice. And let's take a look. It's pretty good. Oops. Yep. A nice heart shape. What if I wanted that not to be a solid heart, but I wanted it to be a heart-shaped line? That is an easy thing to do. So I have the stencil and I have the heart that came out of it. What I do then is just take scissors and trim a bit of that heart away. Just making this inside heart smaller. And I'm going to set it in there, and I will have a stencil that makes a heart-shaped line. Rather than have to wait for all the glue to dry, I've made one. So this is a fully made stencil. It has tracing paper, and then this is stuck to the tracing paper so that, oops, there's tracing paper holding that center heart where I want it, holding it in place. So now if I emboss this stencil, I will have an entirely different heart. It will be a line. And this is a concept that we will explore further with lettering and more complex designs, using the tracing paper to hold portions of your stencil in place. And here is the line art. Okay, so that's how that happened. And next is an ABC XYZ stencil that I made. And you can see that it has tracing paper to hold the bits that would have otherwise fallen away. They're just being held in place where they need to be. And this embossing works beautifully. One trick that I learned the hard way is these small pieces, when they're cut out, are sitting on your desk, and pretty soon they all start looking alike. And yet you have to get them back exactly where they belong. So before I cut out a counter shape, I mark it with a little X on the upper area of it so that I will know which side is correct and which direction is correct when it's time to glue them back together. It can be a puzzle that you don't necessarily win if you don't do that. Okay. We looked at the gratitude piece on the slideshow, and here is the original and the stencil that made it, and what came out. The word gratitude came out in one piece from the stencil. I did not cut this stencil. I let my digital cutter named Cricut cut this stencil from my design. I have hands that are getting old and they have difficulty holding the X-Acto knife. So I'm very happy to let Cricut do the cutting for me. And it's been a great boon to my hand embossing. So the back of this looks as you would imagine. This paper is Reeves BFK. It's a wonderful paper for hand embossing. All right. If you have questions, I'm going to be very happy to answer them when we're finished. So just kind of hold on to them as we go through this. Next up, I have a longer PowerPoint that's going to show many, many examples. But we've looked at the basic, how to do it, how to make it a little more complex. And as we go through what I'm going to show on the PowerPoint, we can reference the things that we have learned and just taken a look at. Okay, so yes. Here's a simple dove taken very close up that didn't require any tracing paper because nothing is a closed shape. It's an open line. On the top of the image here is my pen drawing to make this dove, and then the stencil. So when something doesn't have closed shapes, it can go without the tracing paper. And here is that dove again. And again. And another small dove with a little bit of detail added. This was during the pandemic. We all learned that we had to spend 20 seconds washing our hands. This is my hand with a stencil. Obviously, I did the writing first and then came along and embossed the page. That's a good, something good to remember. Here again is a very simple leaf that is a line, and I have it going both ways. Here's the stencil, and I flipped it so that I could get the image going in two directions. And just a background image of a swirling. I use this swirl for a lot of different things. It becomes pretty handy using portions of it. It also exists without the tracing paper. It holds itself together just fine. Nothing is closed. This rose shouldn't need the tracing paper, but it's there because those thin lines wobble a little bit. So I've just glued them to tracing paper to support them. Had to do a pen and a pencil as a calligrapher, of course. And here are these stencils. The pencil has tracing paper to support those long, skinny parts. It's entirely possible to emboss on dark paper. It isn't easy, but it's entirely possible. Here's that dragonfly again. And the dragonfly stencil is two parts. When you cut out a dragonfly, you get a piece of manila file folder that looks like a dragonfly. And I maintained it and added the details to that portion. So it's a two-stage embossing. I bring the paper and first emboss the shape and then move it over, make sure it's all registered well, and then emboss the details. So shape first and then details. It's a two-stage. So the embossing, the paper is brought up two levels, if you can imagine. And that's how these ginkgo leaves work. Again, this is one stencil, it's one design flipped. And here it is with more of a front light. Yeah, so I emboss the shape and then move over to catch the details. Here's a globe that is also a two-stage embossing. First a circle and then details. This is a book I made called Advice from a Tree, and every page of the book has a simple tree form, and all of the trees are made from these modules. And we'll go through the pages and you'll see that they're just used very, very simply. So the module designs on this page are the same as these. I love the difference. There's a lot that can be done with a line. Here's a 2-level star, and it could be unlimited probably. I just used 2 stencils. And a multi-level heart. You just start with a big one, and the second, third, fourth, just go right through. So I enjoy working with lettering and alphabets and embossing. So that's this portion of the PowerPoint. We have looked at this. And this stencil. And there's another flip. The word art, right side up and upside down. And there's the stencil. This is a recent embossing stencil that the Cricut machine cut for me. This is my writing, and Cricut was able to take this black and white image and create the stencil. And I'm so impressed with the technology that the rough edges of my writing, which I like, were not lost in the translation of the stencil. So on the left is my design for an ampersand using a scroll pen, and on the right is the stencil. And I've used this a variety of ways. It's quite enjoyable to work with. Just the word wild with kind of an extra part of the W because it's the word wild. And this required no tracing paper. It's a very simple line stencil and nothing closed. I kept the D open so that it could stand on its own. This is a very, very, very early piece of mine, and it's the first time I cut my own lettering into a stencil. I was quite amazed by all of this. And the tracing paper is holding the centers of the O, the P, and the loop on the E. It just seemed cozy to turn cozy upside down and make them all close together for this page. And those were Neuland letters, and here's my Neuland alphabet partially cut out. As yet, I have never needed to write anything that had an F, a Q, a K, or a U, so I haven't cut them out yet. Someday, I'll need them, and they're there ready to go. I just haven't needed them. And you can see the counter shapes on the left with their little arrows. As I explained, it's so helpful because those little bits look like nothing on your desk, and they're very important when you glue them back in. Here I've used letters and some lines for the writing. Having an alphabet is very handy. This is my writing, and I decided to make a stencil of my letters. And this was a long time ago, 1986. I'm still using it, and it's still in very, very good shape. The whole file folder tracing paper pair up is very good. It lasts. The stencil for the spiral was also cut by Cricut. And in the photo, I included what I pulled out. And here I'm gluing it to the tracing paper because it would wobble a lot, and I wanted to stabilize it. I used a Valentine shaped spiral here. And I teach workshops online and record them, and they are available on my website if you're interested in knowing a lot more about embossing or any of the things that I teach. Thank you for your attention and for this chance to share something I love to do.
Thank you, Carol. Wow, that was amazing. Very, very nice. Wonderful. Does anyone have questions? I know Carol would love to answer them.
I would.
Yeah. Sabina says all the examples are so inspiring and her head is spinning with ideas.
Great.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I like
awesome.
that. Good.
Awesome. Well done. Do you all have questions? I have a silly question, Carol, if you will allow me.
No
So
silly question.
when you stick the tracing paper, it goes to the front side?
It goes to the side you don't think it should go on.
What does that mean? I'm a bit directionally challenged,
Okay. All right. So here's grateful.
right?
The tracing paper is on this side so that it's read wrong when you look at it, but what you do will be read right.
Mm.
You would think you put the tracing paper here, but you don't. You put it on the read right side.
Okay.
Tracing paper's here. And
Mm.
that then goes down and the paper here and you emboss and you get read right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dorothy, I almost think that you have to do it wrong 1 or 2 times to get it, because I'd had trouble in the beginning too.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
A lot of questions, no, a lot of comments. Thank you so much. It was fun. Thank you for the clear information. So, so beautiful, inspiring. Okay, I can't wait to try it, but I don't have a quick cut.
Well, you don't need a Cricut.
Uh,
You cut with your X-Acto knife.
I, what do you do when you have to, with the curves, it's quite difficult, isn't it?
Go slowly and remember that you are a wonderful human being doing your very best. You are not a machine. And if it isn't quite right, it's fine.
Try again.
Done by hand.
Yeah, a question. Is the tracing paper, is it the tracing paper that keeps irregular lines from forming when you are using the bone folder?
Mm. I don't understand that question.
Yeah, can you clarify?
The tracing paper holds the small pieces that make it read.
Mhm.
If we didn't have the small pieces in place, we wouldn't know what this says.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, okay. Sabina is saying in the embossed piece she did yesterday, she showed yesterday, she did the embossing overlapping from both sides. So the embossed lines would be indent or stand out. So you can choose which way you want them to land. Yes, understand. Okay, Alex says it's a heartbreakingly beautiful idea. Elif says, if we were to use a paper previously painted with watercolors for the hand embossing process, would applying pressure with our pen cause any issues? Would it compromise the paper's strength in any way? Thank you.
That's a good thing for you to try. I don't know.
Spoken like a true mentor.
Yes.
The bone folder is so pointy, I thought it might be hard to make your embossed areas smooth.
I'm holding it low to the page. I'm not holding it high. Low to the page.
Yeah, okay, understood. I'm looking at the chat. Yeah. Okay, I guess. Oh, wow, that's all the questions.
Okay.
Debbie says she took your embossing class a few years ago on Zoom and enjoyed your techniques and tips since then. Yes,
Great.
that you are an amazing artist and instructor. Yay!
Thank you, Debbie.
Great, wonderful. Anybody else has questions or maybe comments?
I second that emotion with Carol. It's Jan Segnar from Canada. I
Okay.
took her embossing. Hello, Carol, her embossing class as well. It was very, very good. I learned a lot. So
Good.
you still have it up and running, correct, Carol?
Yes, it's available
If I'm yeah,
on my website. Yeah.
highly recommend it. Thank you.
Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for sharing. Carol, how do they sign up for your class? Do they go to your website?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yukimi says, thank you so much, Carol. So many great examples and then lovely presentation. Lisa says she loves Carol, and we all do. And Elif says, thank you so much for the clear presentation. There's a lot of thank yous. And PSC says they're excited that you are back on the workshop committee in here next year. So everyone look out. Alex says stunning pieces. Angelina says thank you, very inspiring and interesting. So thank you, Carol. So good. It's amazing you can do so much with the lines. I mean, it's not just the technique, it's how you compose the embossing and how it interacts with your typography. So do you have like a particular go-to process for planning? Like you would imagine it, you would sketch it out, you would...
Yes, I would imagine it, I would sketch it, and I find embossing works best with simple images. So usually I'll sketch something and then simplify it. And then cut it.
So when something goes wrong, I mean, if you do the embossing and then you write the text and then you emboss and then it just doesn't look right, you start all over again? You toss it?
Depends. Maybe you can save it. Maybe you'll like it tomorrow.
So you don't ever toss it?
No.
Okay.
Well, yes, sometimes. But yeah.
It depends.
It's hard to answer those questions because you're there with what you wanted to do and it's not happening. And what do you do? And that's hard.
I noticed that you're wearing one of your designs, the pendant. That is the alphabet. That was the stencil that you created.
Yes.
Wow, that's lovely. Is it available for purchase?
I think it is available on the Utah Calligraphers website.
Ah, I see.
Utah, I think if you put Utah Calligraphers in Google, it will come up. Okay,
understood. Roxana says wonderful presentation and demo, lots of ideas to practice. Anne says that jewel is beautiful. She is eyeing your pendant. Yes, thank you. Any other last questions or comments for Carol? No questions, just people saying thank you. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the presentation. So thank you everyone for joining us. And we are going to stop the recording now. And it will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch it again and again.